The massive chamber floated in the empty space between three dying stars. Its crystal walls stretched for miles in every direction, filled with the soft blue glow that kept the air breathable for dozens of different alien species. This was the heart of galactic power, where decisions were made that affected trillions of lives across thousands of worlds. Ambassador Veltar stood at the center podium, his scaled purple skin gleaming under the chamber lights. His species, the Zephyrians, had ruled this corner of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. Today he brought news of another successful conquest. Honored council members, Veltar began, his voice carrying easily through the translation devices that hung in the air like small silver clouds. The world of Kepler 442b has been successfully integrated into the Empire. Around the curved walls of the chamber, 12 different species sat in their designated areas. The snake-like Thessians coiled on heated stone platforms. The gas-breathing Vortons floated in their protective bubbles. The insect-like Chitauri clicked their approval from their hive cluster seats. All of them had learned the same lesson over the centuries. Resistance was pointless. "Tell us of their resistance," called out Counselor Zenth, her three eyes blinking in sequence. The Moravian leader always enjoyed hearing about how quickly new species surrendered. Veltar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. There was no real resistance. We followed standard protocol. 3 cities were destroyed from orbit within the first hour. The planetary government surrendered before we could target a 4th. Total casualties approximately 2 million. Total time to surrender, 4 hours and 17 minutes. Approving sounds echoed through the chamber. The protocol had been perfected over millennia. Show overwhelming force immediately. Destroy enough to prove your power, but not so much that the planet became worthless. Every species broke eventually. Most broke quickly. The survivors are already being relocated to the mining colonies, Veltar continued. Their industrial capacity will be fully operational within 6 months. Another profitable addition to the Empire. Counselor Grex, representing the warrior culture of the Draconis, leaned forward in his massive armored chair. Any unusual technologies? Weapons we haven't seen before? Nothing worth noting, Veltar replied with a dismissive wave. Chemical propulsion rockets. Nuclear fission weapons that they're afraid to use. Basic electromagnetic communications. A typical pre-contact civilization. The council nodded. It was always the same story. These young species developed just enough technology to think they were powerful. But they had no idea what real power looked like. One orbital bombardment usually convinced them quickly enough. The session was almost over when the chamber doors suddenly burst open. A young Zephyrian officer rushed in, his normally perfect uniform disheveled and his breathing rapid. Ambassador Veltar, the officer gasped. Urgent report from the research division. The chamber fell silent. Interrupting a council session was a serious offense, punishable by exile or worse. The young officer must have very important news. Veltar's eyes narrowed dangerously. This had better be worth your life, Lieutenant. The officer straightened and activated a small holographic projector. Above the device, a small blue and green planet appeared, rotating slowly in the artificial light. Sir, we've detected something unusual. This planet, designated Sol 3 by our star charts, has been broadcasting signals into space for over 70 of their local years. Counselor Yath, an ancient being whose species had mastered space travel before most others existed, studied the hologram with interest. Broadcasting? What kind of signals? Multiple types, Counselor. Mathematical sequences, cultural information, scientific data, and... The officer paused, looking nervous. What appears to be deliberate contact attempts. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. Most species tried to hide when they first discovered they weren't alone in the universe. Very few actively tried to make contact. Show us, Veltar commanded. The officer pressed a control, and the sounds of Earth's radio transmissions filled the chamber. Music played first to Biwao's strange melodies from an alien culture. Then came spoken words in dozens of different languages, mathematical formulas, and even recordings of natural sounds like wind and rain. They call themselves humans, the officer explained. They've been sending these signals in all directions, hoping someone will hear them and respond. Counselor Grex laughed, a sound like grinding stone. They're practically begging us to find them. How refreshingly honest. Veltar studied the hologram more carefully. The planet looked beautiful from space, Oriwar. Mostly water. With green and brown continents covered in what appeared to be dense vegetation, clouds swirled in complex patterns across the surface. "What do we know about their technology level?" he asked. The officer consulted his datapad. "Primitive nuclear weapons, basic spaceflight capability limited to their own star system, and simple computers. They've managed to place some artificial satellites in orbit around their planet. Nothing that would pose any threat to our forces. Population: approximately 8 billion individuals spread across all continents. They appear to be divided into several hundred political groups that frequently engage in conflicts with each other." The council members exchanged knowing looks. A divided species was always easier to conquer than a united one. These humans would probably surrender quickly once they realized they faced a superior force. Counselor Zenth's three eyes focused on the hologram. "They seem quite eager to make contact. Perhaps we should accommodate their wishes." The suggestion hung in the air for a moment before Veltar began to smile. His smile grew wider until it became something predatory and cold. "Yes," he said slowly. "Yes, I think we should. These humans have made it very easy for us to find them. They've even told us about their culture, their technology, their weaknesses. It would be rude not to respond to such a generous invitation." Counselor Grek slammed his armored fist on his chair's armrest. "I volunteer the Draconis battle fleet for this operation." "No," Veltar said firmly. "This will be a Zephyrian operation. A single dreadnought should be more than sufficient for such a primitive world. We'll follow standard protocol, one demonstration of power, followed by demands for surrender. They'll comply within hours, just like all the others." He turned to address the full council. "Honored members, I propose that Sol 3 serve as our next example to the galaxy. These humans have made first contact even easier than usual by advertising their location. We can use their conquest to demonstrate once again that resistance to the galactic order is futile." The vote was unanimous. 12 species, representing thousands of worlds and trillions of beings, agreed that humanity's fate was sealed. As the council session ended and the various species departed for their home worlds, Veltar remained behind, staring at the hologram of Earth. Something about the planet fascinated him. Perhaps it was the way the humans had reached out so hopefully into the darkness, not knowing what might be listening. "Such innocence," he murmured to himself. "Such naive optimism. They actually believe someone out here wants to be their friend." He gave orders for the dreadnought Worldbreaker to be prepared for immediate departure. The ship was one of the Empire's finest weapons, 3 miles long, armed with planet-cracking weapons, and crewed by 5,000 of the Empire's best warriors. For a primitive world like Earth, it was massive overkill. But that was exactly the point. The humans would see the Worldbreaker appear in their sky and immediately understand how outmatched they were. They would surrender quickly, and the galaxy would have another example of why resistance was pointless. As Veltar finally left the chamber, Earth's radio signals continued broadcasting into the void, carrying messages of hope and friendship to anyone who might be listening. Soon someone would finally answer. 3 days after leaving the council chambers, the Zephyrian dreadnought Worldbreaker dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Captain Thane stood on the bridge of his massive vessel, watching the small yellow star grow larger on the main display screen. The bridge was a testament to Zephyrian engineering. Curved walls of polished metal surrounded workstations where dozens of crew members monitored everything from weapons systems to life support. The air hummed with the quiet power of engines that could move the 3-mile-long ship faster than light itself. "Report," Captain Thane commanded, his deep voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 worlds. "All systems operational." "Captain," replied his tactical officer, a younger Zephyrian named Kess. "Weapons charged and ready. Shields at maximum power. The planet designated Sol 3 is exactly where our intelligence indicated. Through the forward viewing port, Earth hung in space like a blue and white jewel. Even from this distance, Captain Thane could see why the humans were fond of their world. It was beautiful in a way that many conquered planets were not." "Any response to our arrival?" Thane asked. "Negative, sir. If they've detected us, they're not showing it. Their radio transmissions continue as normal." Thane nodded. Most primitive species couldn't detect ships at this range anyway. The humans were probably going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their world was about to change forever. "Very well. Begin standard protocol. Communications, prepare the surrender demand." The communications officer, a thin female Zephyrian with intricate tattoos covering her arms, activated her console. "Ready, Captain. Transmit on all frequencies," Thane ordered. "Full power. I want every radio receiver on that planet to hear this message clearly." The Worldbreaker's massive communication array focused its signal toward Earth. The message was simple and direct, translated into the most common human languages that their intelligence had identified. "Primitive species of Sol 3. Thane's voice boomed across space. "You are now subjects of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world belongs to us. Surrender unconditionally, disarm all weapons, and prepare for occupation. You have one solar rotation to comply. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization." The transmission lasted exactly 30 seconds. It was the same message the Empire had sent to hundreds of worlds over the centuries. Usually the response came within hours or sometimes within minutes. Panicked communications between planetary governments, desperate attempts to negotiate, or simply immediate surrender. "Message transmitted, Captain," the communications officer reported. "All major population centers should have received it clearly." "Excellent. Now we wait." Thane settled into his command chair. "Begin targeting procedures. Lock onto their largest population center." The tactical officer's fingers moved across his console. "Target acquired, sir. The city appears to be called New York, according to their communication traffic. Population approximately 8 million. Perfect. Begin charging the planet cracker." 6-minute charge cycle. Deep in the bowels of the Worldbreaker, ancient technology began to wake up. The planet cracker was a weapon designed to destroy entire worlds, but it could be adjusted for smaller targets. Set to its lowest power setting, it would merely vaporize a city and everything within 50 miles of it. The message would be unmistakable. "Charging sequence initiated," Kess reported. "Energy building normally. Estimate 6 minutes to full charge." Captain Thane watched Earth through the viewing port and allowed himself a small smile. This was the easy part. The humans would detect the energy buildup within minutes. Their primitive sensors would tell them exactly what was about to happen to one of their cities. Then would come the frantic communications, the desperate pleas, and finally the surrender. It was almost too easy. "Captain," the communications officer called out. "We're receiving a response from the planet." Thane raised an eyebrow. 4 minutes for a response was actually quite fast. Most species took longer to organize their governments enough to send a coherent message. "Put it on speakers." The voice that filled the bridge was calm, speaking perfect Zephyrian with only a slight accent. It was a male human voice, though the translator made it sound almost musical. "Unknown vessel, this is Earth Defense Command. Your proposal has been received and analyzed. We offer a counter-proposal. Leave immediately. This is your only warning." The bridge fell silent. Then Captain Thane began to laugh. His tactical officer joined in, followed by most of the bridge crew. Soon the entire command center echoed with Zephyrian laughter. "Did you hear that?" Thane gasped between laughs. "They're warning us. A species that hasn't even left their own solar system is giving us ultimatums." Kess wiped tears from his eyes. "Sir, in my analysis of over 40 conquered worlds, that's the shortest resistance message I've ever recorded. Most species at least try to negotiate or offer tribute. They don't even know what they're facing," the communications officer added. "Our intelligence reports they've never encountered alien technology before. They have no idea what a dreadnought can do to their world." Captain Thane's laughter gradually stopped as he regained his composure. "Well then, let's educate them. Status on the planet cracker? 4 minutes to full charge, Captain. Target remains locked on New York City. Excellent. When we reach full charge, fire immediately. No additional warnings. They've made their choice." Through the viewing port, Earth continued its slow rotation, completely peaceful. The humans down there had no idea what was coming. In less than 4 minutes, one of their greatest cities would simply cease to exist. After that, surrender would come quickly. "Captain," the sensor operator called out, sounding puzzled. "I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from the inner system." "Define unusual." "I'm not sure, sir. There are several energy signatures appearing on my screens that I can't identify. They don't match any known human technology in our database." Thane frowned. "Could they be natural phenomena? Solar flares, perhaps?" "Negative, sir. These readings are definitely artificial, and they're getting stronger." "Show me." The main display screen switched to a tactical view of the solar system. Earth sat in the center. But now there were dozens of small red dots scattered throughout the space around it. As they watched, more dots appeared. What am I looking at? Thane demanded. Unknown, sir. Whatever is generating these energy signatures, it's not on the planet itself. The sources appear to be distributed throughout the system. Could they have hidden ships we didn't detect? Sir, our sensors can detect a piece of metal the size of a dinner plate from 1,000,000 miles away. If they had ships out there, we would have seen them the moment we arrived. Captain Thane felt his first flutter of unease. Their intelligence on human technology was supposed to be complete. The humans had primitive rockets, basic satellites, and simple space stations, nothing that could generate the kind of energy readings his sensors were showing. 2 minutes to full charge, Kess announced. Continue firing sequence, Thane ordered. Whatever those energy readings are, they won't matter once we demonstrate our power. Humans learn quickly once they see what happens to those who resist. 1 minute to full charge. The bridge crew focused on their stations. This was the moment that decided the fate of civilizations. In 60 seconds, the humans would see their city destroyed and understand that resistance was impossible. 30 seconds. Captain Thane gripped the arms of his command chair. Soon another world would join the Empire. 10 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Planet cracker fully charged. Captain, fire. The world breaker shuddered slightly as it released enough energy to crack a moon. The invisible beam raced toward Earth at nearly the speed of light, carrying death and the end of human independence. It should have taken 8 minutes to reach the target. Instead, something impossible happened at 7 minutes and 33 seconds. The beam simply stopped. A shimmering barrier appeared around Earth, and the planet cracker's energy scattered harmlessly against it like rain against a window. What just happened? Thane whispered. Before anyone could answer, the tactical officer's voice cut through the bridge like a knife. Captain, massive energy buildups detected throughout the system. These readings, they're off the scale. On screen! The tactical display now showed the entire solar system covered in red warning indicators. Energy levels were climbing rapidly from sources they couldn't identify. Time since their initial response? Thane asked quietly. 13 minutes and 47 seconds, sir. Space around the world breaker began to distort. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist in ways that made the crew's eyes water. At exactly 14 minutes since Earth's first transmission, Captain Thane managed to send one final message back to the Empire. Impossible. Then the world breaker and its crew of 5,000 simply ceased to exist. Dr. Sarah Chen was drinking her morning coffee in the Arecibo Observatory control room when every alarm in the facility started screaming at once. She nearly dropped her mug as red warning lights bathed the room in an eerie glow. What's happening? She called out to her colleague, Dr. Marcus Webb, who was frantically working at the main console. We're receiving a transmission, Marcus replied, his voice tight with excitement and fear. Sarah, this isn't from Earth. The signal is coming from the edge of our solar system. Sarah set down her coffee and rushed to the console. The translation software, which had been running theoretical models for decades, was already working on the incoming message. Within minutes, the words appeared on screen in perfect English. Primitive species of Sol 3, you are now subjects of the Zephyrian Empire. Sarah read the message twice before the full meaning hit her. Marcus, we need to contact the Pentagon immediately, and the UN, and everyone else. While Marcus placed emergency calls, Sarah stared at the translation. Somewhere out there, an alien ship was demanding Earth's surrender. After 70 years of sending messages into space hoping for contact, someone had finally answered. And they wanted to conquer humanity. 3,000 miles away in a deep underground bunker beneath Colorado, General Patricia Reynolds was already reading the same message. The military had been monitoring all communications from space for decades, watching for exactly this moment. Options? She asked her staff. Colonel James Park, her intelligence chief, pulled up a holographic display. Madam General, based on the signal strength and origin point, we're looking at a single large vessel at the edge of the solar system. Unknown technology level, but they were able to translate our languages and broadcast on our frequencies. Threat assessment? They claim they can destroy our civilization. We have to assume they have the capability to back up that threat. General Reynolds nodded grimly. Activate Phoenix Protocol. Full implementation. Authorization code Bravo 77 Alpha. Across the room, a dozen officers began entering commands into their computers. For 50 years, humanity had prepared for this moment. Not because they knew aliens existed, but because they knew that if hostile aliens ever came, humanity would only get one chance to respond. The Phoenix Protocol was the result of decades of secret research and development, hidden budget lines in every major nation's defense spending, technologies developed in underground laboratories that officially didn't exist, weapons platforms disguised as weather satellites, communication arrays, and scientific instruments. Phoenix 1 through Phoenix 47 acknowledging activation, reported Major Lisa Santos from her console. All systems coming online. In orbit around Earth, 47 weather satellites suddenly began unfolding. Solar panels expanded to reveal weapon arrays. Communication dishes rotated to focus on the edge of the solar system. What had appeared to be simple scientific instruments revealed themselves as the most advanced technology humanity had ever created. Phoenix 48 through Phoenix 112 responding, called out another officer. Lunar installations reporting ready status. On the far side of the moon, hidden bases that had been built under the cover of geological research powered up their main systems. Massive railguns emerged from underground silos. Energy weapons that drew power directly from nuclear reactors began charging their capacitors. Phoenix Command, this is Deep Space Station Alpha, came a voice over the communication system. All outer system platforms are operational and standing by. General Reynolds allowed herself a small smile. For 20 years, human ships disguised as unmanned probes had been placing defensive platforms throughout the solar system. They hid among asteroids, drifted in the outer darkness, and waited for a day that might never come. Today had come. Ma'am, Colonel Park reported, we're detecting an energy buildup from the alien vessel. Whatever they're charging, it's big enough to destroy a city. Target analysis? Based on the beam direction, they're aiming for New York City. General Reynolds felt a cold anger settle in her stomach. These aliens had come to humanity's home system and were preparing to murder 8 million innocent people as a demonstration of power. How long until they can fire? Estimate 4 more minutes, ma'am. More than enough time. Signal all Phoenix stations, prepare to engage. Target priority Alpha Air, destroy the hostile vessel completely. Authorization is granted for unrestricted engagement. Throughout the solar system, weapons that had never been tested in combat began tracking their target. The alien ship was massive, but it was also alone and unprepared for what was about to happen. General, Major Santos called out, Phoenix 7 is requesting permission to activate the spatial defense grid. Granted. Full power. High above Earth's atmosphere, a ring of satellites that had spent decades masquerading as a global positioning system suddenly revealed their true purpose. Energy flowed between them in complex patterns, creating a barrier that could bend space itself around the planet. Spatial grid is active. Earth is now protected. Excellent. Time to alien weapon discharge? 30 seconds, ma'am. General Reynolds watched the countdown timer. At 10 seconds, she gave the order that changed everything. All Phoenix stations, you are authorized to engage. Protect the Earth. The alien beam fired exactly on schedule. It raced toward Earth, carrying enough energy to destroy New York City and everyone in it. For 7 minutes and 33 seconds, it traveled through the vacuum of space unopposed. Then it hit the spatial defense grid and simply disappeared. Its energy scattered across dimensions that humans had only recently learned to access. Target neutralized, reported Major Santos. The spatial grid held perfectly. Outstanding. Now let's show our visitors what humanity thinks of their ultimatum. All outer system platforms, execute attack pattern Omega. In the darkness between Mars and Jupiter, 37 hidden weapons platforms suddenly came alive. They had been disguised as asteroids for years, their metal hulls covered with rock and ice to hide their true nature. Now they shed their camouflage and revealed the weapons within. Each platform fired a single shot. Not energy beams or missiles, but something far more exotic. 37 quantum tunneling devices activated simultaneously, creating holes in space itself that reached across millions of miles in an instant. The alien ship, still trying to understand why its planet-killing weapon had failed, never saw the attack coming. Reality twisted around it as 37 different weapons struck from 37 different directions at the same moment. Lunar Command reports successful engagement, Colonel Park announced. The hostile vessel has been neutralized. Confirmed by Deep Space Station Alpha. No trace of the target remains. General Reynolds nodded slowly. Total engagement time? 14 minutes from initial contact to target elimination, ma'am. Outstanding work, everyone. Stand down to alert status but maintain readiness. Where there's one hostile ship, there may be others. As the immediate crisis passed, General Reynolds allowed herself to think about what had just happened. For 70 years, humanity had been sending messages into space, hoping to make contact with other intelligent life. They had always known there was a chance that the first contact might not be friendly. What the aliens didn't know was that humanity had spent those same 70 years preparing for exactly this scenario. Every space program, every satellite launch, every scientific mission had carried a dual purpose. On the surface, they were peaceful exploration and research. Hidden beneath was the largest defensive network ever. Constructed by any species, the Phoenix Protocol represented the combined efforts of every major nation on Earth. Technologies that seemed impossible had been developed in secret. Weapons that bent the laws of physics had been placed throughout the solar system. And all of it had been disguised as peaceful civilian infrastructure. "Ma'am," Major Santos said quietly, "we're receiving communication requests from every major government on Earth. They want to know what just happened." "Tell them the truth," General Reynolds replied. "Hostile aliens attacked our world. We defended ourselves successfully. The threat has been neutralized. Should we mention the Phoenix Protocol? Not yet. Let's see if anyone else shows up first." 3 hours later, in the United Nations building in New York City, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before an emergency session of the Security Council. The city around her showed no signs of the battle that had been fought to save it. People went about their daily lives completely unaware that they had almost been vaporized by alien weapons. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "this morning we received our first communication from an extraterrestrial intelligence. Unfortunately, it was a demand for surrender followed by an attempt to destroy New York City as a demonstration of power." The Security Council chamber erupted in shocked voices and urgent questions. The Secretary General called for order. "Dr. Chen," said the representative from the United States, "can you confirm that this threat has been neutralized?" "Yes, sir." "The hostile vessel has been destroyed. Earth is safe." "How?" demanded the Russian representative. "What weapons do we have that could destroy an alien starship?" Dr. Chen smiled slightly, apparently more than any of us realized. "I'm told that a full briefing will be available tomorrow, but I can tell you this much." The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of losing contact with the World Breaker. Representatives from 12 species gathered in the Great Crystal Chamber, their usual composed demeanor replaced by obvious concern. Ambassador Veltar stood at the central podium, his purple skin noticeably paler than usual. Around him, the other council members waited for an explanation that he didn't have. "Honored colleagues," Veltar began, his voice lacking its usual confidence, "we have lost all communication with the World Breaker. The last transmission was received 14 minutes after the humans sent their refusal to surrender." Councillor Grex slammed his armored fist against his chair. What was the content of this final transmission? A single word: impossible. Then silence. The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. The Draconis councillor leaned forward menacingly. "You're telling us that a primitive world destroyed one of our most powerful dreadnoughts?" "We don't know what happened," Veltar admitted. "The World Breaker was equipped with the finest sensors and weapons in the galaxy. It should have been able to handle any threat a pre-contact civilization could pose." Councillor Yath, the ancient being whose species had mastered space travel before most others existed, spoke in a voice like rustling leaves. "Perhaps they had hidden defenses. Many species develop primitive orbital weapons before achieving interstellar travel." "The intelligence reports were thorough," Veltar protested. "Basic nuclear weapons, limited space flight, simple satellites. Nothing that could threaten a ship of the line." "Then explain the silence," Councillor Zenth demanded, her 3 eyes focusing on him with uncomfortable intensity. Veltar had no answer. He had spent the last several hours reviewing every piece of data they had on the Sol system, looking for something anything Auru, that could explain what had happened to his flagship. The search had revealed nothing. "I propose we send a battle fleet to investigate," Grex announced. "If the humans have some hidden weapon, we need to know what it is. And we need to make sure they understand the consequences of destroying Council property." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Galactic Council's authority rested on the belief that resistance was impossible. If word spread that a primitive world had successfully fought back, it could encourage rebellion on hundreds of conquered planets. "Very well," Veltar said. I will personally lead a fleet to the Sol system. 12 dreadnoughts, 47 cruisers, and a full support squadron. Whatever happened to the Worldbreaker, it won't happen again. 2 weeks later, the largest Zephyrian fleet in a century dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Keth, veteran of 30 successful conquests, stood on the bridge of his flagship and studied the tactical displays. "Report," he commanded. "All ships operational and ready for combat," his tactical officer replied. "No sign of the Worldbreaker or any debris from the vessel." Admiral Keth frowned. Even if the ship had been completely destroyed, there should be some trace of it. Twisted metal, radioactive residue, something to mark where one of the galaxy's most powerful warships had died. Begin deep space scans. I want to know everything that's happening in this system. The fleet's sensors, representing the combined technology of 12 different species, began their analysis. What they found made no sense. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, sounding confused. "I'm detecting quantum interference patterns throughout the entire system. The readings are unusual." "Define unusual." "I've never seen anything like this before. The quantum background radiation has been altered in ways that shouldn't be possible. It's as if space itself has been modified." Admiral Keth studied the sensor readings. His species had been traveling between stars for 10,000 years, and in all that time they had never encountered anything like this. "Could this be natural?" he asked. "Negative, sir. These patterns are definitely artificial. Someone has been manipulating the quantum structure of local space." "The humans?" "Unknown, sir. This level of quantum engineering is far beyond what our intelligence reports suggested they were capable of." Admiral Keth made his decision. All ships advance into the system. Battle formation. Shields at maximum, weapons charged. If the humans want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. The fleet moved forward in perfect formation. 61 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, advancing on the small blue world that had somehow destroyed the Worldbreaker. They maintained constant communication with each other and with the council chambers, broadcasting every sensor reading and tactical update. As they crossed into the inner system, the quantum interference grew stronger. Several ships reported navigation difficulties as their instruments struggled to maintain accuracy in the altered space. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet." "Put it through." The same calm human voice that had spoken to Captain Thane now addressed the entire fleet. "Zephyrian vessels, this is Earth Defense Command. You are entering restricted space. Withdraw immediately or you will be fired upon." Admiral Keith laughed grimly. 61 ships and they're still making threats. These humans have either learned nothing or they're more dangerous than we thought." "Sir?" the tactical officer interrupted. 3 of our cruisers have just disappeared." "What do you mean disappeared?" "I mean they're gone, sir. The Stormwind, Talon, and Voidcutter were there on sensors 5 seconds ago. Now there's nothing. No explosion, no debris, no energy signatures. They just ceased to exist." Admiral Keth stared at the tactical display. 3 ships, each carrying 500 crew members, had simply vanished. There was no trace they had ever existed. "All ships halt advance," he ordered. Emergency formation. Full defensive posture, but it was too late. As the fleet tried to regroup, ships continued to disappear. Not destroyed or simply erased from reality as if they had never been built. "Sir, we've lost 6 more ships." "Retreat! All ships retreat to the edge of the system." The surviving vessels turned and fled, their crews too terrified to maintain any kind of formation. Behind them, the quantum interference patterns grew stronger, reaching out like invisible hands to pluck ships from space. By the time the fleet reached safety at the system's edge, they had lost 19 ships and over 9,000 crew members. The survivors huddled together in a defensive formation, afraid to move closer to the planet that had somehow learned to erase entire starships from existence. "Send a priority message to the Council," Admiral Keth ordered, his voice shaking. "Sol system is defended by unknown technology far beyond our understanding. Recommend immediate quarantine of the entire system." The response from the Galactic Council was swift and decisive. If a single fleet couldn't handle the humans, they would send an armada that could destroy entire star systems. 3 weeks later, representatives from all 12 Council species gathered their most powerful warships for the largest military operation in galactic history. 500 vessels, each one a masterpiece of destruction, assembled at the edge of human space. Admiral General Torvalds, supreme commander of the Council's military forces, stood in the command center of the massive dreadnought Galaxy's End. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the Armada. "Today," he announced to the combined fleet, "we end the human threat permanently. Whatever technology they used against our previous forces, it cannot stand against the combined might of the galaxy's greatest civilizations." The Armada included planet killers from the Zephyrian Empire, reality-warping weapons from the Thessians, quantum disruptors from the Vortans, and hive mind coordination from the Chitauri. It was enough firepower to sterilize entire sectors of space. Every major civilization in the galaxy monitored the operation through quantum communication links. This wasn't just about conquering one primitive world anymore. The Council's authority was at stake. If they couldn't defeat a single pre-contact species, their empire would crumble. "All ships report ready for combat," the fleet coordinator announced. "Excellent. Begin the advance. Today we restore order to the galaxy." The massive armada moved forward in perfect coordination, 500 ships advancing on Earth like an unstoppable wall of destruction. Their sensors detected the same quantum interference that had troubled previous fleets, but they pressed on regardless. At the boundary of the inner system, Admiral General Torvalds opened communication channels to every major world in the galaxy. "Citizens of the Council territories, you are witnessing the restoration of galactic order. No world, no matter how defiant, can stand against our combined strength." The fleet crossed into the system's heart at exactly 14:07 Galactic Standard Time. At 14:12, every communication from the Armada ceased simultaneously. Emergency beacons activated on Council worlds as deep space sensors detected massive gravitational anomalies in the Sol system. The distortions lasted exactly 43 seconds, then faded away, leaving nothing but silence. Long-range telescopes turned toward the system, searching for any sign of the 500 warships that had just vanished. They found the same thing Admiral Keth had discovered weeks earlier. Nothing. No debris. No energy signatures. No trace that the largest military force in galactic history had ever existed. The Sol system appeared exactly as it had before the first Zephyria. The emergency session of the Galactic Council lasted for 3 days. In the great crystal chamber that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, 12 species sat in stunned silence as they tried to comprehend what had happened at Sol. Ambassador Veltar stood at the central podium, but his usual arrogance had been replaced by something approaching terror around him. The most powerful beings in the galaxy struggled to accept a new reality that made no sense according to everything they thought they knew. "The facts are undeniable," Veltar said quietly. "We have lost contact with every ship sent to the Sol system. Over 600 vessels, nearly 40,000 crew members, all gone without a trace." Counselor Grex, the warrior leader of the Draconis, spoke in a voice that had lost its usual commanding tone. "How is this possible? We sent the largest armada in galactic history, 500 ships with enough firepower to destroy entire star systems, and yet they simply vanished," added Counselor Zenth, her 3 eyes blinking in sequence as she tried to process the impossible. The ancient Counselor Yath leaned forward in his chair. His species had survived longer than any other in the Council, had seen empires rise and fall across millennia. "In all my years," he said slowly, "I have never encountered anything like this. Entire fleets don't just disappear. There should be debris, energy signatures, something to mark where they fell." "Our long-range sensors show nothing," Veltar confirmed. "The Sol system appears exactly as it did before we made contact. The same 9 planets, the same yellow star, the same small blue world broadcasting into space." Counselor Thex of the Moravians spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. "What if we're wrong about them? What if these humans aren't primitive at all?" The suggestion hung in the air like a dangerous poison. For 10,000 years, the Council had operated on the assumption that technological advancement followed predictable patterns. Young species developed slowly, made contact when they achieved basic interstellar travel, and were integrated into the galactic order. The humans had never left their star system. Their technology appeared primitive by every measure the Council used, and yet they had somehow erased the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever assembled. "I propose immediate passage of the Sol Quarantine Decree," Veltar announced. "The system is declared off-limits to all galactic traffic. Warning beacons will be placed at safe distance to alert any ships that might accidentally wander too close. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in Council history, they were officially retreating from a single star system. As the formal session ended, the real conversations began in smaller groups throughout the chamber. Representatives clustered together, speaking in hushed tones about implications that none of them wanted to face directly. Councillor Grex found himself standing with Councillor Yath near one of the great viewing ports that looked out into space. They never even tried to negotiate, Grex said quietly. Most species attempt some kind of diplomacy before resorting to violence. That's what troubles me most, Yath replied. They simply removed the threat. No demands for territory, no requests for tribute, no attempts to expand their influence. They eliminated our forces and went back to broadcasting their cultural messages as if nothing had happened. What kind of species does that? A confident one, Yath said grimly. A species so certain of their own power that they don't feel the need to make threats or demonstrate their strength. They simply act when threatened, then return to their peaceful activities. Across the chamber, Councillor Zenth was having a similar conversation with the Thessian representative. Our intelligence networks are analyzing every piece of data we have on human transmissions, she said. The results are disturbing. In what way? They've been broadcasting the same messages for over 70 years. Mathematical sequences, scientific information, cultural exchanges, music, literature, an invitation to peaceful contact with any species that might be listening. And in all that time nothing has changed. After destroying 3 separate fleets, their transmissions continue exactly as before. Same frequencies, same content, same tone of peaceful curiosity about the universe around them. The Thessian's serpentine body coiled with nervous energy. You're saying they see our military forces as, what an inconvenience? I'm saying they see our military forces as irrelevant. They dealt with the threat and moved on with their lives. They're still trying to make friends with the galaxy. Meanwhile, in the deepest levels of the Council complex, the galaxy's greatest military strategists were conducting their own analysis. General Korath of the Draconis military sat across from Admiral Vex of the Zephyrian fleet, surrounded by holographic displays showing everything they knew about the Sol system. Tell me your assessment, Korath said bluntly. Admiral Vex gestured to the tactical displays. We sent increasingly powerful forces against them. A single dreadnought, then a battle fleet, then the Grand Armada. Each time our ships simply ceased to exist. No battle, no destruction we could detect, just nothing. What does that suggest to you? That we never forced them to reveal their true capabilities. Whatever they used against us, it was effortless enough that they could apply it to 1 ship or 500 ships without any apparent strain. Korath felt a chill run through his warrior's soul. You're suggesting they're holding back? I'm suggesting we have no idea what they're truly capable of. What we've seen might be the equivalent of swatting insects. For all we know, they could have destroyed our ships from anywhere in the galaxy. The 2 military leaders sat in silence for several minutes, contemplating the implications. Finally, Korath spoke again. What would you recommend if the Council asked for a new military strategy? Admiral Vex looked directly at his counterpart. I would recommend that we never under any circumstances enter the Sol system again. And I would recommend that we hope they continue to be more interested in making peaceful contact than in expanding their territory. 3 months after the Sol quarantine decree, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy new normal. Trade routes were adjusted to avoid the forbidden system. The warning beacons broadcast their message in every known language. Extreme hazard, unknown defensive capabilities, do not approach. But the beacons carried a second message, one that only the Council leadership knew about. Deep in the restricted frequencies used by military command, they broadcast a different warning. Sol system inhabitants possess technology beyond current galactic understanding. Recommend peaceful contact only. Hostile action results in complete vessel loss. On worlds throughout the galaxy, the story spread in whispers and rumors. A primitive species that had never left their home system had defeated the combined might of the Galactic Council. The details varied in the telling, but the core truth remained. Humanity was not what they appeared to be. Some worlds saw it as hope. If the humans could resist the Council, perhaps others could too. Underground movements on conquered planets began to organize. Inspired by the impossible victory at Sol, other worlds saw it as a terrifying warning. If beings who seemed primitive could wield such power, What other secrets might be hidden among the stars? And through it all, Earth's radio transmissions continued to reach distant worlds, carrying the same message they had broadcast for decades: mathematical sequences proving intelligence, scientific information demonstrating knowledge, cultural content showing creativity, and an open invitation to peaceful contact with any civilization that might be listening. The message now carried a different weight. Any species receiving it would eventually learn what had happened to the Zephyrians, the battle fleets, and the Grand Armada. They would understand that humanity's offer of friendship was genuine, but they would also understand that those who chose war instead of peace simply disappeared. In the depths of space, automated monitoring stations built by dozens of different species detected Earth's signals and dutifully relayed them to their home worlds. The mathematics were elegant, the science was sound, and the cultural content was fascinating. Most importantly, the tone remained exactly the same as it had been for 70 years. Hopeful, curious, and genuinely excited about the possibility of meeting other intelligent life. The humans, it seemed, were still trying to make friends with the galaxy. They had simply demonstrated that friendship was the only safe option. On Earth itself, life continued much as it always had. Dr. Sarah Chen still worked at her radio telescope, listening for responses to humanity's messages. She had been briefed on the Phoenix Protocol and the destruction of the alien fleets, but her job remained the same: keep broadcasting, keep listening, and keep hoping that someday, someone peaceful would answer. Sometimes, late at night when the radio telescope was sweeping the stars, she wondered what was out there. Were there other species like the Zephyrians learning from their example? Were there peaceful civilizations who might finally feel safe enough to make contact? She didn't know. But she kept broadcasting humanity's message of hope and friendship into the void, confident that when the right species finally answered, Earth would be ready to welcome them. After all, humanity had proven that they knew how to protect their friends. They had also proven what happened to their enemies. The galaxy was learning to choose wisely.